2 weeks ago, Kevin Ramirez was arrested for grooming multiple underage girls. I never thought my best friend's glow-up would unravel into a nightmare. But when Jane started hiding her jewelry and flinching at jokes, I knew something wasn't right. We once brushed our teeth together. That closeness shattered when I saw her in a robe behind his shoulder. Now he's behind bars. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Jane and I used to trade snacks, whisper during sleepovers, and mock each other's crushes. We were inseparable. I remember the last carefree day bike rides and Slurpees. Laughing till our sides hurt, she joked about her mom's new boyfriend, a creep named Kevin. It felt harmless. That gold bracelet she always wore, she said he gave it to her. That was the first lie, disguised as a gift. I didn't question it. I should have. The first real shift came at lunch. Jane flinched when I grabbed her wrist, pulling her to our table. The bracelet slid up, revealing faint bruises. She yanked her hand away, laughing too hard. Just clumsy, she said. But she never used to lie to me. That afternoon, she skipped last period, blaming cramps. Her mom's new guy picked her up. I saw his eyes too long on me. Something in my gut twisted. Jane stopped posting selfies. Her eyes always darted when someone mentioned her mom. I tried to joke about Kevin, but she froze. He's nice, she whispered. Emily noticed too. We started watching. One day, Jane left class early with a hall pass she didn't show me. That night, I messaged her, no reply. Next morning, her locker was spotless, like she'd vanished. Her charm bracelet was in the trash. That wasn't Jane, that was fear. I cornered Jane outside the nurse's office. Why'd you ghost us? I asked. Her face paled. I'm just tired, she muttered. Her hoodie sleeves were tugged far past her wrists. Emily texted me she'd overheard Kevin's name at the front office. He was there. I glanced around. Jane's breathing hitched. Don't make it worse, she said, backing away. That wasn't friendship speaking, that was warning. I realized then we weren't just losing Jane, she was being erased. Emily and I stayed late, researching grooming signs. Everything matched gift-giving. Isolation, sudden changes, we decided to act. The next day, Emily brought up a health class project near Jane. She froze. Why are you doing this? She snapped. We didn't answer. But later Jane found me in the bathroom, eyes red. Don't get involved, she said. Her voice cracked. That gold bracelet back on her wrist, as if wearing it made her feel safe or trapped. That weekend, Jane's Instagram went dark. Emily messaged her mom, no reply. I showed up at Jane's house, heart racing. Kevin opened the door, calm, too calm. She's not home, he said. But I saw her hoodie on the couch, her shoes by the stairs. My chest tightened. That night, Jane called me from a blocked number. Don't come back, she whispered. It's worse than you think. The line went dead. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Miss Reyes arranged a last-minute school assembly on online safety. Emily spoke first, strong, steady, brave. Mid-slide, Jane stood up and ran. I followed. In the girls' bathroom, she collapsed. I'm pregnant, she whispered. Her hands shook, eyes pleading. It's him. I held her. We didn't speak for minutes. That bracelet slid off her wrist and clattered on the floor. Emily appeared at the door. We helped Jane up. We're leaving, I said, and we did. Tara Mitchell greeted us at the shelter, warm but efficient. Jane barely spoke. I filled in gaps. He manipulated her, threatened her. Tara nodded, eyes sharp. Jane handed over the bracelet. Throw it out, she muttered. That night, we stayed in bunk beds. Jane barely slept, clutching my hand. Her silence said everything. Emily kept texting updates from school. Rumors swirled. Kevin hadn't shown up. For the first time in weeks, Jane ate a full breakfast. Detective Olivia Morales met us 2 days later. She listened without flinching as Jane described everything: gifts, threats, manipulation. Jane's hands trembled, but she spoke clearly. He said no one would believe me. Morales leaned in. I do. That changed something. Jane sat straighter. We handed over text photos, the bracelet. Morales took them like evidence, not just memories. Emily showed up later, bringing Jane's sketchbook, art therapy. She said. Jane smiled, small, realist art. Kevin sent Jane a message from an unknown number. Come home. No more drama. She froze when she saw it. Tara reported it instantly. Morales tightened the protection order. Jane looked at me. He thinks he still controls me. I nodded. He's wrong. That night, Jane cut her hair short, jagged hers. She cried after, but didn't stop. It wasn't about the hair, it was about shedding fear. The bracelet, still gone. We burned her old hoodie too. Court day came. Jane stood tall beside Morales, her belly barely showing. Kevin smirked when he saw us, but Jane didn't flinch. She held up the bracelet in a plastic bag, proof of grooming. The prosecutor presented texts, screenshots, timelines. His smirk faded. Jane's voice didn't crack. He stole my safety. The judge nodded solemnly. Courtroom buzzed. I grabbed Jane's hand as the cuff snapped shut. That sounds louder than anything Kevin had ever said. We thought it was over. Then Jane's mom filed for custody of the baby. She claimed Jane was unfit, mentally manipulated. The betrayal stung. Jane sobbed, knees to chest. Tara said we'd fight. Morales started digging into the mother's finances. Kevin had paid her rent. Emily made flyers about grooming awareness, and the community rallied. That night, Jane sketched a new bracelet, barbed wire turning into flowers. She won't win, she whispered. That symbol became our rallying cry. A leak hit the school blog, photos of Jane at the shelter. Rumors she seduced Kevin. The post exploded. Jane's hands shook as she scrolled. How did they not see it? She whispered. Morales traced the Jane's old friend. Vanessa, revenge for being cut off, Jane cried, then grabbed her sketchpad. We fight lies with truth. Emily and I helped her record a video, raw, honest. It spread faster than the hate. Jane's voice cut through the noise. Kevin's sentencing was delayed. Jane's panic attacks returned. Tara introduced her to a trauma specialist. At first, Jane refused, but after a nightmare she asked for help. The sessions were hard, screaming, crying, silence. But progress came. She started wearing a new charm, a small silver feather. Freedom, she said. One day she laughed. A real laugh. I hadn't heard that sound in months. We framed her barbed wire drawing and hung it in the shelter. Emily was followed home. A car idled outside her house for hours. She called Morales. The license traced back to Kevin's cousin trying to intimidate us. Morales warned the judge. Extra protection was ordered for all of us. Jane clenched her fists. They're still trying to silence us. I nodded, and still failing. Emily started self-defense classes. Jane joined her. We weren't just surviving now, we were preparing. That feather charm, it swung like a blade. A surprise witness came forward, Kevin's ex-girlfriend, from years ago. She'd been silenced too. Morales connected the dots, same gifts, same tactics. Different girl. Her testimony cracked the case open wider. Jane met her briefly. Whispered thank you, they hugged. Jane later said, we're not just survivors, we're proof. That week, the DA added new charges. Kevin's sentence would grow. The silver feather charm, now joined by small chain link symbol of broken cycles and shared strength. Jane's mom tried to visit the shelter uninvited. Tara blocked her at the door. Jane watched from the hallway silent. Her mom shouted, you've been brainwashed. Jane didn't flinch. No, she said, you chose him, I choose me. The door slammed. Tara hugged her tight. That night, Jane drew a picture of herself with wings, no chains, no bracelet, just her. She pinned it on her wall. That's the me I'm becoming, she whispered. We believed her. The court granted Jane emancipation. She cried into Tara's arms, I'm not property anymore. Her mom's petition was denied permanent. Kevin was sentenced to 30 years. Morales emailed us, it's done. The whole shelter clapped. Jane started college prep classes. Her first essay, How I Rebuilt Myself. Emily read it and cried. The silver feather chain link. And now a tiny phoenix, Jane's new bracelet. Not from anyone else. Her symbols of survival, rage, and rising again. A local podcast invited Jane to speak. She hesitated. What if I freeze? She asked. Emily squeezed her hand. Then I'll speak first. They went together. Jane's voice wavered but didn't break. She shared her story clear, fierce. After, messages poured in. You gave me strength. You saved my daughter, Jane cried. Reading them, maybe I'm not broken, she said. Emily grinned. You're not. You're a damn lighthouse. Jane added a wave charm to her bracelet. Emily's school counselor invited her to speak in a student-led panel. She brought Jane with her. They sat side by side as other girls shared stories, some too close to ours. Jane spoke last. He wanted me quiet, but I won't be. Applause roared afterward. A younger girl hugged Jane. You helped me tell someone. Jane teared up. That is why I speak. She added a tiny microphone charm to her bracelet, each symbol now a weapon, not weight. At the shelter's art show, Jane unveiled her final piece, a massive canvas of broken chains morphing into wings. The crowd gasped. It's called Uncaged, she said. Her hands were steady, her voice sure. Reporters asked questions, but Jane only smiled. The art speaks. A buyer offered $500. Jane donated it to the shelter. This place gave me flight. Tara hugged her. That night, Jane added a tiny paintbrush charm to her bracelet. The school year ended. Jane graduated early. At the ceremony, she wore a simple white dress, and her charm bracelet now heavy with meaning. Emily and I screamed her name from the bleachers. As Jane walked the stage, she paused, lifted her wrist, and winked. That small moment, a lifetime in it. Afterward, we danced under cafeteria lights, laughing like we were 12 again. You made it, I whispered. She smiled. No, we did. Jane's story was featured in a national teen magazine. The headline, Brave Enough to Speak. The article included her artwork, her bracelet, her journey. She held the glossy pages, eyes wide. This is me, she whispered. All of it? Emily nodded. And more. Jane mailed a copy to Morales with a note for believing me first. Another to Tara for holding me up. She added a heart charm to her bracelet, her own heart unbroken. Kevin's lawyer appealed. Jane's hands clenched when we got the news. Again, she sighed. But Morales assured us we've got this. The court upheld the sentence. No release. Jane exhaled like it was the first time in weeks. He stays gone. That night, we made a bonfire at the shelter. Jane tossed in her old journals, pages soaked in fear. Not who I am anymore, she said. The fire lit her face. Fierce and free, Emily got accepted to a youth advocacy internship. Jane hugged her tight. You're going to change the world. Emily grinned. We both will. They plan to launch a support group for survivors at school. I helped design the flyers. Jane named it Resilient Circle. At the first meeting, 5 girls showed up. Jane led with her story. Then listened. That bracelet jingled softly as she poured water for each girl. It wasn't jewelry, it was armor. Jane received a letter, college acceptance, full scholarship. She stared at it, then at us. I didn't think. I thought I was broken goods. Emily hugged her. You're not broken. You're brilliant. Jane packed slowly, touching each charm on her bracelet. They're not just memories, they're victories. The feathered chain, phoenix wave, microphone, paintbrush, heart, they clicked like armor. As we helped her move, she whispered. I'm scared. I squeezed her hand. Then you're ready. Move-in day at college felt surreal. Jane set up her dorm, ranging her artwork, books and bracelet on a shelf. We lingered at the door. Call every day, Emily said. Teary. Jane smiled. I'll make you both proud. Her roommate arrived, a bubbly girl with lavender hair. Hi, I love your bracelet. Jane chuckled. Each charm has a story. She turned to us. Time for new ones. As we left, Jane stood tall, no chains, only light. 3 months later, Jane returned for the shelter's fundraiser. She spoke on stage, bracelet glinting under lights. This place saved me, she said, voice strong. But I saved myself too. The crowd rose in applause. Tara cried openly. Morales nodded from the back. Jane hugged every girl in the front row. Her bracelet now held 9 charms, each a battle. Each a win, I whispered to Emily. She's not a victim anymore, she's a force. 3 months later, Jane returned for the shelter's fundraiser. She spoke on stage, bracelet glinting under lights. This place saved me, she said, voice strong, but I saved myself too. The crowd rose in applause. Tara cried openly. Morales nodded from the back. Jane hugged every girl in the front row. Her bracelet now held 9 charms, each a battle, each a win. I whispered to Emily. She's not a victim anymore. She's a force. We sat by the lake. The 3 of us, feet dangling in the water. Jane held her bracelet, thumb grazing each charm. Every piece has pain, she said, but also power. Emily nodded. You turn them into armor. Jane smiled, then added, and into a map. The sunset painted the water gold. That night, we didn't talk much. We just held space. That silence said everything. Back at school, I found Jane's name etched into the library's donor wall, anonymous, but I knew, to the girl who fought back. It read. I snapped a picture, sent it to her. She replied with a heart emoji and a photo, a new charm shaped like an open book. Still writing, she texted. That day, I knew we were changed, yes, but stronger. Jane's story wasn't an end, it was a beginning. Kevin's appeal was denied final. Morales texted us a single word closed. Jane exhaled slowly. No more shadows. Emily raised a toast with sparkling cider. To freedom. Jane added a final charm to her bracelet, a lock now open. He doesn't define me. The past was done. Not erased, but conquered. That charm clicked quietly as she walked into her future, head high, heart whole. Jane started her own online journal, Stories of Survival. Strength and healing, she called it. Charmed voices, submissions poured in. Teens, moms, teachers, they all shared. Your words matter, Jane replied to each. She wore her bracelet during live streets, each charm visible. These aren't decorations, she said. They're proof. Her voice didn't tremble anymore. She wasn't just surviving, she was leading. On her birthday, Jane got a small box from Tara. Inside one last charm, a tiny compass. Jane smiled. For where I'm headed. She clipped it on, bracelet gleaming. We celebrated with cake, dancing, and no shadows. Later, she whispered, I never thought I'd feel this free. I squeezed her hand. You made it happen. Jane laughed softly. We all did. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.